Okay, we're back.
All right.
Mr. Underschultz.
Last time, with our initial trail, I made a big fuss about starting on his right leg, on the black leg, because that foot was so far out of balance. He was really tilted, and when the bottom of the foot's that crooked and he's tipping that far off center, it makes it very difficult to lift this leg and expect him to stand, especially when he's a nervous, wound up, tense, untrusting horse. So I trimmed a little bit off of the black foot to get sort of better balance, and then we trimmed on the white foot on this left one to get it better balanced, and then we moved back to the black one again. Well, they're both a ½ inch off center today. He's much more comfortable on both of them. He's much more comfortable standing, much more trusting. And today I'm going to start on the left one because that's the one that's out here in the light for videoing. If we're going to trim the dark one, I have to move him.
Right.
So that's the way I make my decisions. Sometimes it's very, very critical what I do and when I do it. Other times it's just, let's do this today.
Okay.
Now he's about to get into that rake. We just have to move him off of there. And again, something simple like that, that's just setting your horse up for success. When he's that close to the wall or that close to some tools, the least little thing goes wrong and next thing, a nervous horse explodes. We've got a real heavy toe callus, and if I'm remembering right, last time we took very little off of the sole. So he's got that big old toe callus. We're just going to knock that back with a knife. You can see when he moved his hindquarters, he's not well balanced. He has still trouble standing on that lopsided foot.
Hence the reason why he's moving around like that, because
of
his imbalance is what you're saying.
That's a lot of it. Yeah. And imagine how sore his joints are from standing crooked and moving crooked all this time.
You know, I run into a lot of people that when they run into a horse like this, they're like, well, you know, I better hurry up and trim, and just kind of, they're almost inaccurate about it. Here's a situation where you don't necessarily want to be in that big of a hurry to where you're trying to get it done for the horse, but you're so inaccurate with the trim because it's not helping his balance any.
We can't afford to be inaccurate. If we just rushed through, I'd have taken a lot more foot off of this than I did.
Right.
But remember how we measured, and he was much shorter on his outside, ½ inch shorter. So there's the piece we've trimmed off.
Oh, yeah, that's a great contrast.
Try to get him back into balance. I've got a little bit more I want to do, but he's struggling to stand there. Put it down, give him just a few moments. I mean, you know, like 15 seconds even. It's huge on these horses. Just enough to get squared away and relaxed a little bit. And then pick it up and continue.
My grandmother used to say, the hurrier you go, the behinder you get, and that certainly seems to be the case here. You don't want to, you think you're hurrying to get through a job, and you're just getting further behind in the situation.
I'm thinking your grandmother was a brilliant farrier.
She could have been, let me tell you. She was. Oh wow! Even just on that set down. Yeah.
That's a huge difference.
That is a huge difference.
Now, as he moved that little bit, of course I'm up front where the camera didn't have a view, but I'm watching that foot pick up and set down, pick up and set down, just this little step around that he's doing. And he's now breaking over the center of that toe when he lifts, and when he sets that foot down, he's catching the center of that toe and going flat.
I got a good image of that. Of the bulbs when he set the bulbs and his foot down flat on the mat just now, or on the concrete just now.
Excellent.
That was a nice landing, I thought. That's why.
So
hopefully it comes through here.
That's going to make him a whole lot more comfortable. And again, it's not that he's footsore, but that twisted foot runs pressure up every joint, every tendon, every ligament, from the coffin bone to the top of his shoulder.
Yeah, that makes sense. So.
And if that whole leg is affected, now his neck is affected, his back is affected, his pelvis is affected, all the way down to the bottom of the hind feet are affected. So you just got to go back to basics.
Yep.
Good, normal balance. So now we'll switch over and do the dark foot, the right
All
foot.
right. Well, Hank's gonna,
Lead him
Mac's
up.
gonna
There,
lead him
please.
up for a step or two.
Yep, another step or two, please.
Get our
There
angle
we
better.
go. That'll work.
There you go.
Perfect. Come on, Mr. Hankamus. There, boy.
I noticed too, Kirk, this is just a little side note. I noticed how when you go to pick up his foot, you don't push into his shoulder to get him to give. You don't kind of force him. You don't tend to knock him off balance to give him his foot. You just kind of ease your way in there. And because I think so many people try and shove the horse off balance physically to get the foot off the ground. Well, that would even be worse for this guy, for this horse.
Well,
So I like how you approach the
You are
picking up
correct,
foot,
and,
picking up
and we'll
foot.
back up and do that again. I'll explain what and why.
Yeah.
So just again here, we were low on the outside. So I'm taking just the toe off, a little bit off the outside. And now we're running that inside wall and taking a lot off.
Let's see if I can get the, oh yeah.
He's standing so much better on this side.
He feels better.
The Leaning Tower of Pisa trying to stand on that other.
He's not struggling, so I'm going to knock this thickness of the toe back at the same time because he's balanced and relaxed on that other foot now.
Yeah, he is.
Let me see if I can, oh, yeah. That's a nice shot of the balance on the left and what you've done there to the right. Yep. Let's see if I can sneak to the side here. Oh, yeah.
Bring him up the steps there, please.
Let's see if you can get him a little more. Yep.
There we go.
Oh, wow. And that's the stance of choice. And I noticed some, I don't know if the camera caught it there. It might be a piece of licking and chewing a little bit. Just, and every time I happen to scan the camera down towards his front feet,
Yep.
he chooses this better posture that's just like,
It's automatic.
I'm home. It is,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good way of putting it. So you know, as a farrier, you're on the right track.
Exactly.
Because he's
When
giving
you
you
can
these,
watch your horse change right here before your eyes, you know
Yeah.
you're helping
Yeah.
him out tremendously.
Yeah.
Look at all that still.
Yeah.
That's relief.
yeah,
it is
it's
relief.
instant relief. Boy, that's cool. One of the coolest things about this whole thing is reading the posture of the horse.
Yeah.
You know, and that half inch that you measured in the beginning of this, when you evaluated him before you started trimming, that half inch was the world to this horse.
Well, before we forget, scoot him back around, tail to the door again, please, Matt. And let's go over your question about picking up a foot, because that's huge.
Yeah.
I have a lot of clients that have struggled to pick up their horse's feet.
Yep,
And I don't. They're easy for me. Now, you mentioned that I just barely touch him. This is a horse that's a little bit tense, a little bit tight. He's not really trusting. And so it doesn't take much to get his attention.
Yeah.
I'm constantly touching my horse. And when I can stand here and talk and be relaxed, that energy, that positive feeling, that comfort flows into your horse and really settles them down. Often it has the same effect on my clients too. But I don't do it for my clients. I'm just a horse.
The horse
But-
is the important thing.
But here's the right front. I want to pick up the right front. And I start with the back of my hand, up here at the shoulder. If you do this to a person or have a person do it to you, and the back of your hand is a much softer, less aggressive feel than if you turn and use your fingertips, which now put a lot of pressure on. It's 5 individual points of pressure instead of over that whole back of your hand. So all this is doing is just, okay, buddy, Mr. Hank, here I am.
Yeah.
And he's already thinking about me being here.
Yep.
So now I just slide the back of that hand down, and as I come down here to the forearm, you see him switching his weight. He's
Yeah,
already
I
freeing
see
up
that.
down here on that fat lock joint.
He's starting to get a little lighter in stance and
Yeah,
a
he's
little
starting to
lighter
think,
footed,
okay,
so
here
to
you go.
speak. Yep.
And so now I'll just turn my hand over, run it down the back of the cannon, and I'm not lifting his foot up. He's saying, okay, here
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
And we got to remember, these horses feel a fly on their leg, and they'll pick up and stop. So when I'm touching him, he knows what's going on, and he
Yep.
can choose
Yep.
to ignore, or he can say, no problem, I'll lift it up for you.
Great. Thanks for going over that for us, because that's a big, big piece of this whole
It is.
puzzle.
It is. All right, let's
Skin to
turn
the front
him
here.
again.
Okay, we're
So the
moving.
front feet are facing the door. We'll measure our length
Okay.
of inside outside, and then we will wrap. That got everything covered?
Yes, and you know what, Mac, if you back him up to where the horse is in the shadier part of the floor there. There you go. Perfect. That's good. Excellent.
Ready to go?
Ready to go.
All right. We flipped old Hank around, facing the doorway again, so we can get a good view here of the front of his feet. Before I started trimming, we measured these inside walls, and he was 3 inches. Well, now he is 2 5/8. He was 2 1/2 on the outside. He's still 2 1/2 on the outside. Well, that's because I didn't remove anything. 2 5/8 on the inside. That's not correct. He really should be 2 1/2 here and 2 1/2
right.
there. And I'm saying 2 1/2 because that balances him out. Some other horse might be 2 1/4.
Sure.
2 1/2 is not the magical number. Balancing inside outside is the magical
That's
number.
obviously per horse. That
Changes on every horse.
yeah,
Length,
yeah.
angle changes on every horse.
yeah.
Yes. I'm going to walk around and we'll measure his other foot. And again, you can see where he just, that moved over. You saw him flinch.
Yeah.
But look how much better he is than last time we were here.
Oh yeah.
And our time is much less time to get to this point. So again, there we are. Well, this foot is actually 2 3/4. We were 2 5/8 here, and we're 2 3/4 there. We're still 2 1/2. So we brought him down a full 1/4 inch here. We brought him down. We brought him down 3/8 of an inch here and 2/8 of an inch on this side.
Yeah.
Again,
Or a
I'm not
quarter,
worried
yeah.
about making those match. When I trimmed each foot, I trimmed as much as I thought was safe and comfortable off the inside.
Okay.
So if this is not exactly the same as that, I don't care. That's the best I can do on this foot today.
Yeah. That the horse's foot will tolerate. You don't
Exactly.
want
I don't want to
him-
trim so much we get him ouchy.
Right,
That's
get
just
him-
making things worse.
Exactly. That makes sense. The horse's soul quality and such will determine how much you can trim at any
Absolutely.
given time.
Absolutely.
But you have the measurements to know where you're headed.
So now I'm going to grab my hoof stand and we'll round those up and smooth everything.
So 90% of the trim, or maybe even more, was done with your nipper accurately nipped to get balance. So an accurate nipping really creates balance. Now you're going to just shape up here some of the, would you
Yep.
agree with that?
The more accurate you are with your nippers, the less rasping you need to do.
Okay, that's what I was kind of getting at. I can see how much time you took to be very strategic with your nippers so that now the rasping isn't, obviously it's not creating the balance more than your nippers did.
I picked this foot up a little differently because he was paying so much attention to me. I started on his forearm and rather than up at his shoulder because he was already watching and listening to me.
Yeah. I think he's starting to get the pattern, of course, just like any other pattern. I know we mentioned this on previous video about how you chose to position your hoof stand, because that can be another issue. If someone's not paying attention, they can have the inaccurate height on their hoof stand, causing the horse difficulty. It could be too low, not necessarily always too high, and that kind of thing.
Well, horses
'Cause I
have
can
a
tell
lot
he's
of
comfortable
freedom
with, yeah,
in their shoulder. We've all seen them strike out, and they can get that
yeah, yep.
foreleg way up and strike high. I'll show you when I get this foot down. But even like right there where he pushed, I was able to hold that stand in place.
Yeah.
He feels secure here. And the difference is leverage. I'll explain that when I get the foot on the ground and can show a little better. What I'm doing is just bringing that flare on his toe back. Trying to straighten up the slope of this hoof wall. that also gives us a steeper hoof angle. Start matching it up to the pastern angle. It gives us a reduced breakover, makes it easier to pick his foot up, takes stress off of tendons, joints, ligaments.
Yeah, yes, yes indeed.
But the difference on your hoof stand height, if your horse can get down here and press with a short hoof stand,
Yes,
he can pick up the other leg and stand on it.
yeah,
I
we've all
like-
seen that.
I like the forearm to be level or even above level, because out here he can't press down on it so much.
Yeah,
The most they'll do is kind of hop on the other leg, and it's just
Yeah.
not comfortable, so they quit doing it.
Yeah.
And they just let that leg dangle.
I was just
out
going to
there.
say he looked perfectly comfortable.
Yeah.
And I noticed your shoulder was in line with his shoulder. You weren't kind of winging him out to one side
Well, there's
without
another
knowing.
critical
You're in
factor.
pretty good alignment, I noticed.
As I bring the leg forward, now he's trying to step on it here, but as you bring it forward, Hank, you're not listening, buddy. As you bring it forward, Hank, that leg just, that horse will put that leg where he wants it.
Yeah,
And if
yep.
we, as Farrier, drop way
Yeah.
off to the side, you
I
can
see that a
all
lot.
this torque pulling
no-
the shoulder, his
Yep.
elbow, his knee. They're not going to stand that way
And
very
there's,
long.
and there's no amount of yelling quit that's going to help that unless you
Not
get
at all.
positioned the way you currently are. So that's an important thing to.
You want to set your horse up
Emphasize.
for success.
Yeah, and it just looks
And
comfortable. He looked uncomfortable for that moment. He was almost like, "What are you doing?" And then you brought him back in position. Great.
Yeah, let's do the other one.
All right.
I get my gloves back on there. I took them off the point, but I do so much rasping. It just takes all the calluses off my hand. Next thing they're raw. So I wear gloves anytime I'm doing my rasping.
It took me a little while to realize that these new rasps will bite you. And if you have a pair of gloves on, the new rasp won't bite you as badly.
And again, you notice where I'm in alignment
yeah.
with his body and his
Yeah.
conformation.
Boy, that's so important to know and recognize.
And the next horse I may hold a different spot because they have different conformation.
They have different positions.
Sure.
Yep.
Each horse is an individual. I'm not rasping as much off of this toe as I did off the white foot because there's not near the flare on this foot. And I think there's more flare on the other foot because he was so uncomfortable on this right leg that he was
Yeah.
standing more on the left, causing everything to stretch and pull.
That makes sense. Compensating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Come on, let's try this again, buddy. There you go, Mr. Hank.
And kind of even the curvature of his cannon bone and the way that cannon bone comes out of the knee, it kind of comes in toward the middle of his body, and I noticed you accommodated for that, the way you're positioned here.
Yes.
He would be very uncomfortable, probably objecting if you tried to pull everything outward. And I don't know why some people insist on wanting to pull those feet outward.
That's the first time I've seen him naturally stand straight.
Yeah, he just
without
chose
that
it.
black foot being.
Yeah,
tucked
he just
underneath.
landed there.
He
Yeah.
did just land there, yeah. And look how much more comfortable he
And comfortable standing there because he hasn't moved.
looks. Yeah.
Yep. Now, do you want to say anything about the hinds at this point in time?
No, he does. His hind feet are really normal
Okay.
in terms of length, angle, flares.
Okay.
They weren't all distorted. His conformation behind is much better. And he didn't have all the hoof distortions behind.
Okay.
There was
Yep.
so much to go over on these front feet that we
Yep.
just dealt with them.
Yep.
I will go ahead now and trim his hind feet, but
Yep.
it would just be a routine
Yeah.
trim back there, same as it was last
Yeah.
time, just a routine
Yep.
trim. The front feet are where he had the issue.
Yeah.
The front
Wow.
feet are with Farriers, and we can make it so much better for him.
I'm going to take this camera and tilt it to the side because it's giving me the whole horse here. So people that are watching it are going to have to tilt their head. Wow. Before he stepped out of position, he was just as comfortable as could be.
Yeah.
Now I'll flip the audience back right side up. So don't want to keep you viewers dizzy, but I had to turn that to the side so we could see it. That was just
Well, that should
amazing.
show the difference in his top
Yep,
line
yep.
now compared to our
Yep.
previous trim when we first
Yep.
met Hank.
Oh, yes.
And when the legs are more comfortable, when they're moving straighter and more true,
Yep.
all the muscling changes. The neck, the shoulder, the chest, the back, the hip, forearms, gaskins, those all change as his movement improves and his pain and discomfort lessens. And you really see that in the top line before and after.
Yeah. Any other?
He's dropping his head again. He
Yep,
did that
yep.
after the first leg. Yeah.
So, as we did last time, you trimmed the hinds. Is there any other closing comments you want to make about what you will do to the hinds? It is a routine trim, as you said, at this point.
routine trim, no big deal.
So,
I
yeah.
will say I noticed that he, since finishing the second front foot, he started cocking a hind leg.
I was going to ask you about that.
I've not noticed that on Hank before.
That's
And that's again just how much more comfortable. Now he can relax that back end because
gonna
he
say.
can hold himself up front.
I was hoping you get to that because my final question was going to be, when he relaxes that back foot, is that a sign of comfort or discomfort? Some people may mistakenly think, oh, how come he's not stepping on that one foot? Well, that's actually a sign of relaxation.
Yep.
That's not a sign of discomfort because
Correct.
now he's obviously standing down on it, but he's choosing now to kind of loaf in the back end. Maybe that's a good word to say.
Well,
He's
for a
relaxed
long,
enough to kind of loaf a little bit, loaf around, and
as a rescue
Yeah.
horse, we don't know how long he was
Yeah.
screwed up in front.
yeah,
But for a long time, at least many, many months that we
Yeah.
can verify, he was
Yeah.
pretty sore in these front legs.
yes, he was.
And you don't notice him as a lame horse because it's
No.
pretty much equal left and right.
He agrees.
But
He was.
he's compensating by overloading the back end.
Yep.
Well, now he doesn't have to overload the back end. So now he's taken already the opportunity to rest and relax his back end, take the stress off of
Yep.
behind.
This was our second trim only, and I think he's come a long way. And I know you said we still have a little ways to go yet in terms of perfect, but I figure you're going to meet a point where his perfect is not necessarily our perfect. The end goal would be ultimately what? That you know that you've reached your maximum maintenance phase, let's call it, where
Well, let's start by talking some generalities. And in general, I need 3 trims or shoeings, as the case may be,
Okay.
to get a horse that is not correct. I don't
Right.
care what or why, it's just not correct. It takes 3 sessions to get them about 80% where they should be back to so-called normal.
Okay.
If we are 80% correct as people, we're pretty happy. We can do pretty much anything we want to do relatively pain-free. And horses are the same way. Now, that first 3 trims or 3 shoeings, 80% correct. The other 20% takes a year to a year and a half to fine-tune. So he's a long way from being right, but if we never get past the 80%, he's a happy horse. He can be ridden, trail ridden, shown, jumped, work cattle, whatever you want to do with your horse, at 80% right, they can do it very, very well.
Yeah.
Now we prefer they're 100% right.
Right, yeah.
Or at least 90% right.
Yep.
But let me point out what we're talking about there.
He seconds that motion, actually.
From these lopsided hoof trimmings,
Yep.
you watch me trim from the bottom. You know I took
They are
nothing
quite
off of-
lopsided, aren't they?
You know I
Yep.
took nothing off of the outside heels,
Yep.
which are the crushed, rolled under heels. I've
Okay.
done nothing for that.
Yeah.
Except improve his balance.
Right.
But even having removed 0 hoof wall back here on this heel,
Yep.
look how much better that profile is.
Yeah. Everything is
Look how much
stable.
better this
Yep.
profile is. So if we can fix the balance, if we can fix the length of toe, if we can fix the breakover, the angle, as he moves better and better, as he feels better through the whole rest of his body, as his legs get stress removed from them, you'll notice these crushed heels just all on their own start to open up and come over. That's a lot of the 20% that I mentioned earlier that takes another year to year and a half to get after we get the first 3 sessions done. So that's what I'm aiming at long term, is getting those
Great.
crest heels much more vertical, much more wider, give them
Yep.
good support on that outside.
That's awesome. We promise that we will clean up the manure off of his hind feet before you go to measure those.
Thank
Because
you
I guess
very
we
much.
have to say, obviously, we're going to do the same process to the hinds. Measurements are always important. We can't be
Yes.
accurate. There's no accuracy without measurements.
Correct.
And I don't care how good a person thinks their eye is, it always needs recalibrated. I'm a good
Well-
example of that. Always recalibrate your eye. Measuring is the most important thing with these horses.
My philosophy is that I am correct by eye, lengths and angles, about 90% of the time.
Yep.
But what happens if your horse was the 10th or
Falls
11th
into
horse
that.
that I screw up
That's
on?
right. Yep.
So you want me to measure
Yeah.
so that I
Yeah.
have every horse correct
So,
instead of most of them correct.
So I think that would be our takeaway message.
Yeah.
Observation requires that we do it with some accuracy, and through accuracy, the only way we can do that is take some measurements to know where we're at with our horses.
Yep,
You know.
absolutely.
Mr. Mack, would you like to say anything in closing? We do thank you again for another great visit with you and Hank.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for you guys, and I'm so happy to be able to watch his transformation, watch him improve. Gosh, when he got here, he was really overweight. I was scared for him. I didn't know. I was like, he might be a pasture ornament for
Yep.
a long time, but no, he's really come a long way. I'm really proud of him and the progress. You can see how close he's standing to me now
Yep.
and stuff. So I'm happy to see where it keeps going.
Great. Well, we look forward to seeing you again down the trail for a session number 3.
Might be riding him then. Who knows?
That's
You
awesome.
should be riding the next day or 2. I would give him 2 or 3 days to adjust to this trim, and then get on and go.
Yeah.
Absolutely, put him to work.
Yeah, we'll see about how we can do with this mine first.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great.
So,
Thank you again, and we'll see you guys soon.